Greetings, you've landed at the VUC, IP Communications and VoIP community. We would like to thank Simwood.com for their support. Simwood can turn you as a developer into a telco. Our hosted PBX is from onsip.com, and you can go to getonsip.com for a URL people can click to call you. We've been privileged over the last 5 years to be using the best conference bridge on the planet. Yes, I'm talking about zipdx.com, full color, full featured, full HD conference bridge. Our website, vuc.me on the webs, hosted by bluehost.com. And our worldwide local rate dial-ins are from voxbone.com. Okay, with that fanfare, just another quick announcement here before we welcome Ben and Aaron from Known, which is withknown.com. It's a couple of events that are coming up, and I wanted to mark them. 16th of April in London, Cranky Geek. We've mentioned about that. You'll have to Google it because there is no site that is directly concerned with that event. Next up would be also in London, the hackathon, the TAD Hack, 11th and 12th. So it's actually there first, now that I think of it. And then Camellia World in Berlin. And, of course, the big hackathon in Lisbon, 13th and 14th of June. And then 3rd and 4th of October, there will be ClueCon and AstraCon, of course. So here we are. That brings us to today, somehow. And we were going to start with Enterprise Connect, but Dave Michels hasn't given any signs of life yet, so hopefully he's fine. I'd like you to welcome Ben and Aaron from Known, and notice how I cleverly got out of pronouncing anybody's last name to mangle it. So Ben and Aaron, Aaron and Ben, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi.
Thanks for having us.
I don't know if this is a disclaimer or what, but I actually use Known, and I'm a paid subscriber. So let that be known. I think it's a fantastic project. And we're going to start by, I'm getting some echo from somebody now. Who is echoing? Am I the only one?
No, you weren't the only one.
Maybe
I'm afraid it was Ben.
Okay.
I was hearing it, yeah.
Okay, well, as soon as you folks start talking, we won't have that problem, I guess. So, and that's going to be in 2 seconds when I ask you how you started this. So you're co-founders, so why don't you introduce yourselves a little bit and tell us how you started Known. But you'll need to unmute first. There we go.
Okay, sorry, yes, reaching for the unmute button. Yeah, I mean, so Known is it's a single site for all your content. The idea is that you should be able to communicate as easily from a space on the internet that you control as you do from the spaces you don't, like Twitter and Facebook and so on. And so what we did is we actually created an open source project to allow you to do this that was first part of what's called the indie web community, which is a community of developers, of hackers, of designers who are associated with companies like Mozilla and Esri, as well as being independent.
And that's also where we met, more or less. So we had both been participating in this community, and Ben had started working on this project for his personal website, and we met at an event, and it was really similar to something that I was trying to do, but I wasn't able to with other open source software, and that's where we really came together and started collaborating on it at that point.
And so what we did was we actually, so we're calling in right now from Meta Ventures, which is it's kind of a values-based accelerator, but it was actually founded by the Knight Foundation, by PRX, by KQED, which is the NPR and PBS affiliate here in San Francisco. And they, supported us and helped us actually build this platform as a way to give people more control on the internet over their communications. And so there's a couple of aspects to that. One is the ability to connect to other people in a peer-to-peer fashion, and another is simply a place to put all your content that you can feel secure isn't going to disappear. We see web services vanish all the time because they go out of business. If you own your own content, that's not going to happen. So you always get to keep a copy of everything you have, everything you post on the web, while also getting to use the social networking services and these great app experiences that everyone else is using. You don't lose anything by owning your own stuff.
Yeah, and I would say also we really started out at the very beginning working on a platform that we could use to power our own personal websites with this idea of how can we publish all of the content that we might want to share on different websites and different social networks. How can we publish it all from our own website first and then send it to those other social networks and other websites? And how can we still interact with people on those social networks? And how can we interact website to website with our friends who also have their own sites and blogs and publish things? And so starting with that idea, what that would look like, how do you interact socially between different social networks and different websites. We started with our own websites and just sort of expanded from there and set out to really see what can we build that would work for other people as well.
And I have a thing that I can interject here because we can show this screen quickly to show how, if I was doing a post on my own site, how I can enable the various syndication things. I'm just going to show that real quick, which you can see now, and then we will go back to, wait a minute, present to everyone, sorry. I think that would have been on the YouTube, though. So here you've got all of the different connections that I've made, and Ben or Aaron will now list what things they've got going and what maybe is coming in the future.
Yeah, so I mean, we started with the kind of the text-based social networks. So Twitter and Facebook were big ones. Foursquare, when we started, was actually honestly a bigger thing than it is now. So we have Foursquare. We have LinkedIn. We've actually got SoundCloud as well, so you can upload audio and push it to SoundCloud.
We have Flickr for images, so if you're posting an image, you can share it to Flickr, you can share it to Twitter, you can share it to Facebook, you can share it to LinkedIn.
And so what's cool is that because Known is fully open source, a lot of people have been building other connectors. So Digo, the sort of academic bookmarking tool people have built connected to. WordPress, which is obviously, that's 23% of the web. People have built a connector over to WordPress as well, and more of those are coming. Tumblr is another one. And then, so what we do is we look at those community plugins and also bring them into our hosted service. So we're like WordPress. You can install it on your own site. If you don't want to mess around with servers, you can also go through us. And so we check out these community plugins. We put them onto the hosted service as well. And Google Plus is one thing that is coming. We've worked really hard. It's very hard actually to post to Google Plus from an external application. We've worked directly with Google to make it happen, at least for Google Plus pages. So that's coming a little later on. And it's cool to see Matthew here, who I guess has just joined from Matrix, because part of communicating from your own site is sure, status updates, photos, kind of usual social network stuff is great. But there's a lot more to that as well, of course, and I think that's particularly relevant, of course, to this group of people. Is kind of being able to initiate calls, being able to actually start communicating in very real-time ways between people as well, and that's definitely on our radar.
Anybody have any questions so far?
So, I mean, what I was thinking is, would it be all right if we maybe showed you some of the things that we're doing with it, and then is that a reasonable thing to do?
Absolutely, I think that's.
Yeah, I for one would really like that because I've been so busy recently. I'm the only person here who hasn't really grasped exactly what your thing does. So I would.
No. I actually need some info as well. So I kind of lack a context, but I'm a longtime WordPress user, Twitter user, and have gone through manually connecting things to Facebook and this kind of stuff, and realizing that it's hard. So, but please do shine a light. Show me the error of my ways.
And definitely, that's one of the things when we started doing research and really talking to people, trying to suss out. There's a lot of people who use WordPress and other platforms for their sites, and they were trying to connect all of these different social networks through a variety of different plugins so that they could share their content with their audiences on all these different platforms, and really having a lot of trouble getting everything to stay up to date and stay connected. And so, especially with the hosted platform, what we've tried to do is make that connection as easy and seamless as possible. And we're also right now thinking through solutions that will let us help people who are self-hosting make that process even easier for them as well.
So here, I'm going to start by showing, this is actually my personal site, and which is kind of known site number one, because it's what I started building it for. And I'm showing this on a laptop. What's important to say is we know people are using smartphones to access the internet over half the time. So this works just as well on a smartphone as it does on a desktop. But it's easier for the purposes of this tool to demonstrate it on a laptop. So let's say I want to post a status update. You showed this screen before. I'll just say I'm demoing known. Apologies for the sound of my keyboard. And I'm going to say, right, I'm going to hit the my personal Twitter account. I'm going to hit my personal Facebook account. For the purposes of this, I'm also going to hit our known Facebook page. I'm going to hit my LinkedIn, and I'm going to hit our LinkedIn company, and then I'm going to hit publish. And so what's happening is it's going to post to my own site, but then it's going to hit all of those endpoints as well. So we have a series of links at the bottom here. And what's going to happen is if people reply on those sites, it's going to get drawn back in. So I'll demonstrate that with this blog post I wrote a little while ago. And here you can see, so I've written the blog post, it's here on my own site, and we're actually pulling in some comments from Twitter. We're pulling in a local comment from me, a local comment from someone else, and some likes. So this one didn't get any play on Facebook, but you know, I have a copy of all of my interactions in one place, and that means that it's actually easier to search. So if I look for everything I've written about the indie web, I can find all of my content about the indie web across all of the platforms that I've posted to in one place, and that's always going to be mine. So that's the first thing. It's kind of a record of everything I write. It's a record of all of the responses that I've had. So let's say this is Erin's site right here, and she uses it more as a kind of personal status update. And so she wrote this a little earlier today. I can just reply. I can reply to any site on the web from my known site. So I'm just going to hit reply here. This is a Firefox integration, and say, I watched the dawn, if I can type, from SFO this morning, which I did. It was beautiful. And what's going to happen, I don't need to syndicate that anywhere else. I can just hit publish. And what's going to happen is that I get a copy of my reply on my site. But if we reload here, if it was picking up, there we go. We see that the reply is there too. So we both actually keep a copy of all of our interactions. So there's quite a few people. Obviously, Erin and I are both using it. There's a few people using it for different reasons. So Leo here is he's now mostly using it for check-ins. He's using it for photographs as well. Warren here is, again, mostly using it for photos, but some personal notes and that kind of thing.
Sort of like a life diary or a live stream.
Yeah, kind of a life diary or a live stream. And so we actually we've got a number of known sites for different reasons as well that are just kind of notes. So we're thinking very heavily about podcasts right now. It's something we're really interested in, and we want to help people both publish and discover them more easily. So we're keeping some notes. So here you can see Erin in particular has been writing a lot, saving a lot of bookmarks on our private multi-user known here. So no one else can see this, although of course we're screen sharing. You know. Sorry?
Yeah, until now.
Until now, exactly. But it's private, it's access control, it's multi-user. And so what I can do if I want to save another bookmark to it, let's say this website, which I happen to have come across, I can just use the bookmarklet and save it to this private known site. So the idea is you can reply to, you can save any resources that you find on the web.
So I've been using this site for us because we're trying to just gather a bunch of research and ideas and accumulate different blog posts and articles that people have been writing, resources they've been sharing about podcasting in general. So as I go through my day, I come across a blog post that I think is interesting, something worth saving, something worth sharing. I'll just grab it from the bookmarklet in my browser, save it to the site. Ben can come check it when he has time. I can also send it to our company's channel. That integration is there, and that will notify Ben that I've saved this if I want him to know about it right away.
So I think it's worth saying we didn't really go through this. So it comes out of the box with a couple of content types. We've got status updates, we've got blog posts, we've got photographs, we've got locations, we've got bookmarks, and we've got audio. If you save audio, it will create a full podcast feed, so you can use that as a starting point to podcast from. But each of these is also a plugin. So it's very easy if you're using the self-hosted version to extend Known with different content types, with different themes, with different ways of processing all of this content. So it's not, you can use it out of the box as is, but we've designed it to be extensible, and we're adding more customization to the hosted version over time as well. It's also worth saying that you don't just have to respond to, when I said that you could reply to anything on the web, I really meant it. So it's not just static resources. Here, there's a tweet, and I can actually use that, and this is the only way I tweet and reply to tweets, is I can actually use that to respond to a tweet here. So it's, again, using the Firefox integration. The bookmark would do it. We're going to have some apps later in the year. And I'm just going to say this is a message about publishing via SMS. I'm just going to say for my personal account, publishing via SMS would be really cool. And here, because I want it to go on Twitter, I want it to come from my Twitter account, and I hit publish. And so again, I get the reply on my own site, and I'm always going to have a copy of that. But publishing via SMS would be really cool. It shows up on Twitter as well. And so that's Known in a nutshell. It can be used as a personal site. It can be used as a multi-user collaborative space. We started with text, but it's absolutely not limited to text. And it's really about connecting and publishing from your own website.
I have a couple of questions because this is a more technical audience than a general audience too. I myself tried to. My first reflex would have been to self-host because we have a server. We have a dedicated server. And as it happens, we didn't have the right, and I don't remember the details, and this is part of my question. We need to know what versions of what software are required for self-hosting. And there's another question after that, but I just want to mention that the reason I didn't self-host is because we didn't have the version, and I'm not capable of changing versions because of the way the server is set up. We don't completely.
Right.
So what are the requirements to self-host first?
So Known requires, it's PHP based, it's a LAMP stack. So Known requires PHP 5.4 and above. It requires some extensions on top of that. It needs things like XML RPC. It needs OpenSSL. A couple of things on top of that just to really deal with some of the cross-site interactions that we do. It then sits on the Apache web server by default, and it uses the what's called the mod rewrite plugin in Apache in order to kind of serve up its pages. All the pages in Known are virtual. Other people have ported it to Nginx and other server environments. But Apache is what we have out of the box. So you've got to be able to run PHP 5.4 with the various extensions, and most of them, they're fairly common extensions. And we're trying to cut down on the list of extensions over time. Some of them, like XML RPC, we are not going to be able to cut out. But so we have those. You do need to be able to run an htaccess file on your Apache environment to run those rewrite rules as well.
Yeah, and our goal really from the beginning has been to try to make it as accessible for as many people as possible. So one of the things we did right at the very beginning of the process was start to interview a lot of people who were interested in hosting the software themselves to try and get a sense of what kind of platforms they were using. And one of the things that we found out was originally the platform was built with MongoDB, and a lot of people on shared hosts couldn't use that. That was an inaccessible step for them. So we made a change there to switch it to MySQL as one step to make it more accessible to a wider audience. And we've been doing a lot. PHP, the PHP version is another one that people who are using a shared host run into, because a lot of times the shared host has a much older version of PHP, and if you're a customer of a shared host, you're not always able to make that update. Sometimes you can request it with the provider.
So on the database note, I mean, as this is a technical audience, so MongoDB seemed like a cool idea at the time, because it was, you know, we don't want to impose a schema, and we certainly don't want plugin authors to write their own database code. And so, you know, it seemed like it was a relatively good fit from that standpoint. The trouble is, it's not just people on shared hosts. A lot of people don't know what to do with it, and it actually has some, I'm going to say, mixed press right now. So we moved to MySQL because you could run it on a shared host. It's usually what's provided by default, but it is it's a very abstracted database layer. It does still support Mongo if you want to run Mongo, and I know a lot of people have been asking for Postgres, for example. Mm-hmm. And so that's an easy thing to add. I think we will be adding that this year. There's, you know, there's Couch. I've heard a lot of talk about Couch as well from our users. And so, you know, all of that is possible, and we have one of the few database abstraction layers that I'm aware of that handles both NoSQL and SQL database backends. So we are trying to make it as adaptable as possible.
And another question on that level of self-hosting. Are there images for Amazon or what is Ocean, DigitalOcean, or anything? I mean, maybe not today, but is anybody thinking about that, or is that maybe something that users should do? Good, advanced users.
So users have started doing it. So there is like a Docker container that's community provided. We definitely want to have DigitalOcean. We ourselves, I mean, the hosted service actually uses AWS as the backend. So Amazon images are something that we could totally provide, and we're thinking very hard about that. You know, and that's part of owning your own space too, right? It doesn't have to be on a box, you know, in your office. It can also be in a virtual space, a virtual server that you own on someone else's infrastructure. So yeah, I think that's really important, because also what you can do then is take away all those worries about the PHP extensions and the PHP versions and all that stuff you don't want to worry about. And you can also support things, you know, support technologies that the shared hosts simply will never be able to support. And there's a lot in the modern day web stack around real-time communications, around you know, voice over IP, that kind of thing, that, I mean, you're not going to be running on a shared host. It just it simply won't work. So it gives us more flexibility too.
And also, having images available would pretty much attract people who like to play around and who have accounts at Amazon or DigitalOcean, or there must be 20 cloud services who are doing this now. And this is the ideal way. This is a way that I would try something, for example. And as it happens, I looked at installing, as I told you, had the problem with the PHP version. But now we could move on to the hosted part of it. And as I happen to have this domain name lying around, I hooked that up, and actually I got service from Ben himself, who helped me debug the thing. We had a cookies issue, but so people can have their own domain. And I have a question for you on this too. This is a kind of a trap question. SSL server. If I wanted to be HTTPS / that's a tricky one, isn't it?
It's yeah, tricky is an understatement. I will try and keep my language clean on that one, because it's really it's something we're really concerned about. We understand that security is, you know, we believe very strongly in making sure that everybody has security. There is an issue with the way SSL is provisioned these days, and the way it's handled by virtual infrastructure like AWS, which means that it's very difficult for us to provide a secure environment for custom domains. And in fact, you'll find that WordPress.com and Squarespace both don't provide that as well, which is, you know, I think is not a great situation. In a world where really everybody should be encrypting all of their communications, I believe, it's really frustrating. So it's something we care a lot about. We're interested in the approach taken by services like Cloudflare, But we've also, that again is hard, and we are still pretty small. You are looking at the entire known team, so it's kind of, we need to make a way for small businesses and hobbyists to create secure environments without too much overhead, and that's the way we're going to find ourselves at a secure web. Right now, the process with certificate signing requests, with server installations, is hard. And speaking for Amazon, their elastic load balancers will only support one certificate. So you'd better know about all of the domains that you want to secure before you deploy it. You can't actually run a dynamic service for someone else, and that's really frustrating. And that's something that we are talking to both registrars and certificate authorities about. It's something that we want to solve. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely top of mind for us.
Yeah, and it's I underline the fact that this is not coming from any problem that you have, but just the way things work. A couple of comments that came through IRC. First of all, Jim asked, and I admit I only know one of the words in this sentence, is this a combination of Buffer and Evernote to some degree? I think he's talking about the paradigm, obviously, and I know what Evernote is.
But Buffer is a service that allows you to queue up social media posts to post on a scheduled basis. And they're really cool. We like Buffer for all kinds of reasons. They're very transparent about their company as well, which is kind of awesome to watch.
I would say a lot of people have made that analogy, like Buffer plus Evernote, Buffer plus WordPress, something like that. We definitely see that. A lot of people, if they're using it specifically to tackle their social media presences on a variety of different networks, especially with the pro version or the self-hosted version where you can attach multiple Twitter accounts, multiple Facebook accounts, Facebook pages, things like that. The one bit that we don't have right now is that would sort of really make that analogy is the scheduling, so the ability to set the time that you want a post to go out, and that's something that we've been talking about for a while as well, and we're looking at bringing in the next few months, is the ability to sort of set the publishing time for that post.
We may have that infrastructure up and running.
I noticed there's something, and I forgot the name of this, but it has to do with connecting to Facebook. There is a third-party service. Remind me what that is. I hope you know what I'm talking about, otherwise I have to go look. It's something Lee, another extension that talks knowingly. No, can't be that. In other words,
Bridgie?
Oh, Bridgie.
Yeah, exactly. Bridgie. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember the name because I don't know what it is. What is that? And since that's part of what you're doing too, it's available anyway.
Yeah, so Bridgie is another open source project that came out of the same indie web community that we did. And what Bridgie does, it actually is the piece that brings those interactions back into your site. So you're posting to Twitter. Bridgie is the thing that is sending back your interactions from Twitter. And it's doing that over an open protocol called WebMention, which Known fully supports into its core. And we work really closely. Basically, our teams are really good friends, so it's very easy for us to build direct integrations. And so we have a connection integration in Known right now into Bridgie, and it's only going to get deeper.
Yeah, so we use Bridgie as a third-party plugin for Twitter and Facebook to bring the tweets, the retweets, comments on Twitter, favorites on Twitter, likes on Facebook, comments on Facebook back. So all those social interactions live on the original post on your site. And right now you do it through a plugin in the Known backend, and we hope in the future that we can make that even deeper so that you don't even have to go through the process of authenticating with Bridgie.
And speaking of Bridgie, this is a good time to get Matthew to explain, without revealing anything as secret between you folks, what he's been doing. What are you guys talking about? And what is matrix.org? No, we already have a whole section of that. I'll refer people to that one. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yes, I guess we don't have anything to reveal, but we can be completely transparent because both Known and Matrix is wonderfully transparent and open. But we met with Ben, I think, back at the WebRTC conference in Paris back in December, and had a chat about how Matrix might be integrated with Known as a way to provide some real-time chat and voice into the solution itself. Now, that's been blocked on our side by having embeddable web widgets, which could be wrapped up as a plugin that could be implemented using Known's existing third-party plugin API. And it's something that we've basically been wanting to do on our side. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where we've ended up with reusable iOS widgets. As of a few days ago, there's something called Matrix Kit that we're about to release that allows you to build your own Matrix functionality into your iOS app. But meanwhile, the web interface for Matrix is still a great big monolithic Angular web application that doesn't necessarily embed straight into something like Known. So this is still very much almost next up on our to-do list, and I really want to have it happening. And Ben mailed me a few weeks ago saying, Matthew, you remember how we spoke however many months ago? Are you guys alive? And the answer is, yes, Ben, we're alive, and I'm sorry that we don't have the plugin yet, but we'll get to it as soon as we can. And trust me that the very first embedded Matrix client we have will be for Known.
Well, that's awesome. I want to play with your iOS kit as well.
Oh, perfect. Well, please go and come on to Matrix and have a chat, because, in fact, I'm here with Amandine and Ren and Brittany, and the guys who work here have been working on it for the last couple of weeks and got very excited about it this morning and gave me a big seminar, and I can't wait to play with it too.
Let's give a plug for Matrix. It's matrix.org, right?
Yes.
We want to know more about that. There is a VUC, whole VUC session not that long ago. Unfortunately, I don't know the number of it, so you can go to vuc.me and search for that. Any other questions? I think I covered IRC, anything that I saw. Oh, Matthew mentioned also that, and it's true, I was perplexed by this, that the Firefox plugin wasn't visible on the screencast. These things happen. It's just the way the screencast works. So, again, that's nobody's fault here, but maybe the way Chrome scrapes the screen or whatever. But we guessed what was happening, but it's true that I didn't see it.
It's actually my fault. It's because I screen shared one screen rather than one window rather than my whole screen, and it didn't occur to me that the Firefox integration would show up as another window. So I apologize for that. If you didn't see it, just know that it's really cool.
It did, and it does work. So, Michael, you feel that I have flies? They're driving me crazy. That's why I keep doing this. It's not that I have any kind of syndrome. Michael, are you more clear, or do you have any specific questions? Not getting any audio from him.
Self-muted. Yeah, a little bit. I think I'm going to have a play and see what this adds to the toolbox of widgets and things. But it looks interesting.
It is interesting, and to reiterate in the most simple fashion I can, if you think of having your own space, that's what Ben was saying earlier, that you're uploading stuff to your own space, whether it's, assuming you're hosting yourself on your own server. Of course, it's not even going anywhere. It's just available to the web, and you have all the data. I'm pretty sure I don't need it yet, but I'm pretty sure I saw an export facility too. So yeah, you can import maybe too, but you certainly export all of your data. So if you're hosted somewhere, you can bring it all down. Is there an import from any place?
There is. So we started with Blogger, interestingly, because Blogger were in the process of throwing some people off, and so we wanted to help them. But what we're doing is, the idea is that you should be able to move your site basically with one click, and that's the goal. Is to so from known, whether it's from known to known, whether it's from WordPress to known, whether it's known to WordPress, etc., you should just be able to move and host your content wherever you need it to be. So that is again something. It takes a little while to get it right, but we are, a lot of the code is laid down for that, and it's something that we'll be looking forward to introducing, before the summer.
And we do have a full data export, whether you're hosted with us, whether you're self-hosting. So if you're hosted with us but are thinking about moving to your own infrastructure in the future, we have, our export includes what? HTML, JSON?
I think we're the only hosted service that I know of, at least, that also provides a full SQL database dump as part of that package. You don't have to use it. We do provide the HTML, et cetera, but it is there if you want to import it into a self-hosted node.
Yeah, so we want people to feel comfortable that their data is theirs and it's accessible.
And that is the main point, and it starts there, but rather than, which I have to do sometimes, copy and paste into Facebook or something else, you're connected directly. I'm trying to remember because I haven't really used it that much. Because I use other cross-posting services as well, and they do, some do this well and others don't with the images. So if you're posting if you have a post with an image, the image goes over to Facebook. Does it go to Twitter? Because Twitter's kind of limited in what it can do with it.
So what So what happens is in the next release we're going to have Twitter cards. And so what's going to happen is you actually, because of the way Twitter works, you have to whitelist your own domain for Twitter cards. And we do provide the open graph tags as well. And if you're posting an actual photo, so your post is a photograph, and that's the first level content type, it will post natively to Facebook, to Twitter, to Flickr, wherever you want it to go. Ditto, a photo is one type of image. It works well with animated GIFs, whatever you want to do.
So what about SoundCloud, for example? And this is one of these tough questions because I don't know how those are implemented. I know that Google Plus, just as an example, there's only a few things you can do on Google Plus other than YouTube, and one of those things happens to be SoundCloud. And I think that was one of the most clever decisions they've ever made on Google Plus, by the way, because it's a single click. So if I do a SoundCloud, I suppose I should have tried this before, but I have never done it. If I do well, wait a minute, we're sharing to SoundCloud, but if I have an embedded SoundCloud, is what I meant. What happens?
So if you have a status update, for example, that is a link to a SoundCloud, absolutely that will work. So that's how that works. It's less easy if it's let's say a blog post that happens to have a SoundCloud embedded in it, because it's hard for Google Plus, for example, to know that that's the content that you want to push out. So what it's going to do is give you a preview image probably for your blog post instead.
But you can definitely embed SoundClouds in any post unknown, and you can definitely syndicate audio to SoundClouds if you have it, if you're publishing it first unknown.
I think that's particularly interesting to podcasters because a lot of them use SoundCloud as a secondary rather than a primary place to keep their sound files. We've actually covered a lot of ground here, and Dave Michels has been patiently waiting too, and it's going to be his turn in a second. Wanted to get to, I've asked you brought up a bunch of challenges that are tough challenges. What other challenges that we haven't mentioned, because this would be interesting to people, what are you finding as challenges, either technical or even social, as far as talking to people?
So, anytime...
Ruling the world, is in other words.
Only time. No. Anytime that you're asking people to change the way they communicate, you're asking them to make a big behavior change. And so part of the goal here is to make it as seamless as possible, to make it as lightweight as possible. But there are some things, unfortunately, that the open web platform doesn't do as well as closed services, right? And so some of those have been things like notifications, which I know that I want to have a notification when someone replies to me. I want that. I want the ability to turn it off, but it's something that I want. So that's a challenge, and it's something that we're looking at deeply. And another thing has been just all the other services on the web basically are designed around the assumption that you're only going to have one domain, that there's going to be a twitter.com or a facebook.com. And so kind of what we're beginning to find is that we need to provide bridges for, let's say, services like Add This, which allows you to, add sharing buttons to your website. It's very easy for them to add a facebook.com link or a twitter.com link. It's much harder for them to add a, benwordmuller.com link because, there's obviously, it obviously doesn't scale. And so what we've had to do is think about how we make that easier for those services so they don't have to care that, I'm self-hosting on my own domain, on my own server somewhere. So providing bridges between kind of the siloed ecosystem so that you can run your own site and communicate as easily as you can on those services. Those are challenges, but we are meeting them, and in a large part that's our goal.
And on the social side also, we've spent a lot of time talking about different ways that we can help connect all of these independent websites and really turn them into something like a decentralized network across the web, and exploring different ways that we might do that. And we've put different wireframes and prototypes in front of people to get their feedback on some of our ideas. Because one great possibility would be the ability to find and follow independent websites who are potentially running Known or other platforms that support these web technologies, to subscribe to them, just like you would follow your friends on Facebook or follow someone on Twitter, and to consume their content just as easily, to send them messages just as easily as you would on some of these closed social networks. So that's a bigger sort of social area that we've been spending a lot of time thinking about and exploring ways that we might address that.
I think it's a really, really interesting thing that you're doing. Tim has a question, so I'm going to give him a chance to unmute. Here he is.
Yeah. Hi. Actually, I've got two questions, it turns out. One of which is, how does data migration work? So if I've been running this on a server and then I decide I want to self-host, is that something that's easy to do, or is it a pain?
It's easy. It's easy to do, and it's going to get easier. So I'm going to give you the two answers for this, which are right now and what's going to happen in a couple of weeks' time. So right now, you hit export, and basically you get a zip that you can download that has the full database export, that has it in a couple of formats that you can run through programs and import in a couple of different ways. In a couple of weeks, and I'm being slightly cagey about that time because that we don't have dates on kind of the roadmap for this. We just know that we're going to do it. What's going to happen is you will literally log into your new site, say, all right, I want to import it from another site, plug in the address, it will make the connection, you'll authenticate, and it will simply pull the data across. So you're not even going to have to worry about getting that zip file.
So my other question, which was that maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear you mention Tumblr.
Oh yes, there is a community Tumblr plugin right now. So someone from the open source community has been working on that, and we're looking at bringing that into the core platform potentially in the next month.
Excellent. Now you only need diaspora, LO, and drop in or drop out, whatever. Drop in. I'm on every one of these things, not about once a year, but still. Anyway, anybody final call for anyone who has questions that weren't answered? Otherwise, while I'm waiting for people to unmute on ZipDX, *6 to toggle your mute state. I think the only way to really see what this is to do what I did, which is to just go open an account. There's still free accounts as far as I know, so go check it out and just play around with it and see what it does, because it's really, really interesting, and it does fulfill an important need if you're connected to 50,000 different social networks like I am. I'm still searching for the perfect platform, and I think it doesn't exist, but Known is really an interesting effort, and I think that it's relatively new, and you really want to check it out. By the way, before we let you folks go, a quick reminder that this actually came out of the indie movement, right? Indie web?
The web movement,
so
yes.
we can probably tell people how to check that out and learn more about that, because that's a more general and wider movement. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the indie web movement, it actually runs a number of indie web camps throughout the year. There's actually one happening right now in Cambridge, Massachusetts. There's going to be one in Portland in the summer. There's some in Edinburgh, in New York. It's worth checking that out. The website at indiewebcamp.com, INDI webcamp.com, is a wiki that has a whole bunch of information about the technologies that we use and other projects use. It lists a bunch of projects. And there's also the IRC channel, which is Indie Webcamp on Freenode. Just go in there and say hello.
Cool. And there's one more question or comment from Matthew. I'm just trying to torture Dave because I can see he's there waiting with bated breath. Matthew, what were you going to say?
Sorry, Dave. Just a final thing, Ben. I saw in the Twitter demo that you gave earlier, in the Known demo, that somebody was asking about SMS integration. And I don't know if you saw that I answered on Twitter, but something that could be useful is that we're providing a free SMS gateway via Matrix at the moment. That wouldn't involve embedding the whole thing in as a web client, but you could just use it as an API if you wanted, as a way to go and basically publish stuff out for free for now.
Let's make it happen. That's awesome. That's really cool. Thank you.
That's what we do best here at VUC. We connect people, which is what you're all trying to do. All right. Without further ado, thank you, Ben and Aaron, very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Hope to see you again, or maybe you'll come back. You're welcome to stay, of course, but I know you may have other things to do. Here he is. Without further ado, let's see. Let's see. How about this? Dave Michels.
All right. Well, I don't know. I such a drum roll and everything. I got nothing to follow after that group. I got nothing exciting or innovative. I just got my own. I do impressions. I could do that.
Yes. You don't show up often enough. It's been years, but I would like you to lower your laptop lid because we're only seeing your eyes right now.
Laptop lid.
Okay,
I'm in ground control here. I got no laptop lid.
Okay, well, the webcam. Anyway, now we can see you. So you were at some obscure convention of geeks last week. Tell us a little about that.
Actually, no. This is the obscure convention of geeks. I was at an obscure convention of marketing people. The geeks know to stay here. So yeah, no, I was at Enterprise Connect, and I had it's for me the busiest week of the year because all a lot of the vendors try to do their timings around Enterprise Connect, and I think that's crazy because it just gets lost in the noise. You're better off before or after. But for me, it's always the busiest week of the year, just because I somehow managed to cram in, meetings. The day starts, the alarm clock goes off, usually with a 6, and you're literally going from event to event, to meeting to whatever, all the way until past 10. So for 3 or 4 days in a row, depending on how you count. So a very busy event, very busy week, and happy to share with you some thoughts. And I think Tim was asking initially about the Innovation Showcase, but I could talk about that. I could talk about other stuff, wherever you like to go.
Well, the first question I would have is because there must be some major one topic creates the most buzz. And was there such a thing?
Well, I'm sure that everybody thinks so. No, so the Enterprise Connect, it was a 25-year anniversary. The show does not have that name the whole time, so it used to be known as VoiceCon. And VoiceCon, that'd be a simpler answer. You'd have, what's new, latest and greatest in the PBX. Wow, this year it's voicemail. Looks like voicemail has finally arrived. But in Enterprise Connect, it's such a broad category of what's going on in enterprise communications that it's harder to pinpoint any particular innovation or theme, because you've got the video guys, you've got presence, and of course voice. You've got mobility going on, and things like what we just saw here. So I got asked, and I'll answer these questions. I got asked by somebody else who has the most momentum, and then I also said that who has where's the puck going, right? So where is the puck actually taking? One thing to talk about where the puck is, and one thing to talk about where the puck is going, which might be what's behind your question. And so clearly Microsoft Lync has the most current momentum today, and you couldn't walk more than, I would say, 5 booths in the exhibit hall without seeing some sort of Skype or Lync logo of what these solutions integrate with, and Microsoft, Zig Serafin did the keynote, and he surprised me actually. I wasn't really expecting Microsoft to really announce Skype for Business, because I knew that they have their big event coming up for this spring called Ignite, and that's kind of tied with Windows 10, and Skype for Business has a lot of Windows 10 features. So I thought they would be kind of stalling a little bit and waiting until then. But no, they actually not only announced Windows 10, Skype for Business, but they also made it available as a pilot, or you can download it and play with it if you want. And they've also done a lot more I didn't realize with the Skype for Business in the Office 365 cloud. So they've already converted many of the servers over, even though most of the users are using Lync. So a lot of momentum around Skype for Business. They they previewed it. They made it available. They took us through demos. They showed us the Surface Hub in greater detail, which is their new. I have a Microsoft Surface computer, which is my laptop kind of thing, and the Surface Hub is more of a wall-mounted type of thing that is basically the same thing. I mean, it's a Surface touchscreen computer that you hang on the wall instead of putting in your bag. And they took us through that. They took us through. They announced a new Polycom device that will lower the cost of room conferencing in the Microsoft space dramatically. So a lot of energy around the Microsoft stuff. And then the question of where the puck is going. And I wrote a post on this at No Jitter. I called it Anytime Communications, and there's been so much activity on No Jitter that even though the post is only a couple days old, it's already off on the page 2 or whatever, page below the fold, as they say. To me, what I was trying to communicate with Anytime Communications, and we could talk for hours about this because I'm really excited about this, is most of the UC conversation, Unified Communication conversation, although it supports messaging, most of it's really around what we call real-time communications. We use that term a lot in here at VSC, real-time communications. And the problem with real-time communications is that it's not how we converse. We converse probably most of our conversations in email, maybe secondly in messaging-based solutions, and then third comes real-time voice and video. And so as a result, our conversations are getting scattered, and there's a lot of complaints around email and how ineffective email is, because email is meant to convey communications, but it's turned into our to-do list, our filing system, our record-keeping system, and so there's this new thing that's emerging that I'm calling Anytime Communications, which attempts to combine asynchronous and real-time communications together as a complete solution. And so unfortunately, Anytime is often associated with I can work anywhere, anytime with my mobile phone, but that's really going back to mostly real-time. I can make calls anywhere. But so I don't know if the term Anytime will last or not, but I think this is where we're going. Cisco, last year at Enterprise Connect, I would say there was one solution on the show floor that nobody noticed in this category. It was made by Biba. This year there were, I think, 5 solutions on the show floor. Cisco launched Spark, which got a lot of attention in their keynote, and I think Spark is very, very interesting. You've got Biba still. You've got Akano. Akano is kind of mostly in the video camp as a gateway type of solution, but they have this concept called co-spaces, which does the same thing or a similar thing. So Akano, and then you've also got Interactive Intelligence made a fairly major announcement at the event called Collaborate, which is a solution similar to this. So we've got Spark, Interactive Intelligence, Biba, and Akano. I'm missing somebody. There's Slack, which wasn't at the conference, and I know I'm missing somebody. I'm going to be terribly embarrassed later. But this new category that's emerging fairly rapidly, I think it's still very young, fairly immature. I think it's going to grow tremendously, and I think in the next few years we'll be talking a lot more about this space. So that's the answer to your question, Randy. Do you have any other questions I can answer in 25 minutes or less?
Well, during this 25 minutes, I was trying to wade through No Jitter to find the post. Now that I have the URL, the clients, long story short, I've got 3 machines running and I couldn't transfer the URL. I'm almost ready. Here it is. I think I'm going to be able to post it now. So that's, wow. Isn't that good? Okay, so in IRC, I have posted Dave's article, and you can find it by going to No Jitter, waiting 13 seconds, or dismissing the big ad pop-up, clicking
Randy,
on post.
Are you on video, or are you walking around somewhere? You know, your kitchen or something? It looks like you're in the witness relocation program or something.
Oh, look at this! No, you know what? I'm on Link. Let me give you the real camera. Okay, it's my Link Microsoft camera. Here we go. Any second. Now I'm going to drop out. All right.
So Dave, who's
Here we go.
what's happening?
Gosh.
You need to adjust your laptop lid there, mister.
Oh, you can't get away with that one, Mr. Michels.
James, aren't you supposed to be on some train or something?
No, I'm working from home today. Thanks to Bernard all day.
So, Dave, how are the folks at Unify doing?
The Unify. That's the one I forgot to mention. Thank you, Michael. So yeah, Unify Circuit. I think I actually feel much better about Unify. I was very concerned about them, but again, they bet a lot on this new what I call anytime communications, and so they were really the first one to really launch in the enterprise space. And they didn't get the attention they deserved because they were laying off half the company and they don't have a strong presence in North America, et cetera. But their solution is evolving very nicely. The company seems to be evolving nicely. This company seems to be stabilizing, and so I do feel much better about Unify and the circuit solution.
Is that like one of the? I hate to say this, but is that one of the more visible sort of projects leveraging WebRTC, or is it more pervasive in that sphere?
Well, okay, so now you've opened up two cans of worms there. So first off, I would say now that Cisco is in the space, Cisco is the most visible. Cisco was after Circuit, but launched far more aggressively. They launched with a freemium model. Circuit does not have a freemium model. You have to pay for it. It has a free trial model. Circuit launched in many more countries. Circuit launched with many more customers. Cisco is just, let's just say a 900-pound gorilla. And so Circuit is coming out. Now, Circuit did it very differently. Excuse me, did I say Circuit? Cisco Circuit. Oh, it's all too confusing. So Cisco launched it what they call Project Squared, and they just put it out there. And this is part of Cisco's new cloud mantra, where ready, fire, aim, and put it out there. Let's figure out how people use it. Let's get some feedback. And they've built in their infrastructure to really understand that and respond to that. They've been making updates fairly feverishly. They've done some significant changes, and the old school of thinking in enterprise communications, of course, is 2 releases a year, and so you work toward these releases, and features either make it or they don't, and if they don't make it, then they have to wait until the next release. And so Cisco's just kind of micro releases, and the product is expanding dramatically. So what they announced when they renamed Project Squared to Spark, they also announced for the first time a freemium model. So now there's a free core offering, and then there's 2 levels of upgrades that you could now pay for. And I think it's going to get a lot of attention, a lot of momentum. Now, I use this category, anytime communications, very broadly, but the solutions that are falling into it are actually all very, very different. And so one thing that Cisco is doing that, because they have a huge installed base of both telephone and video equipment, is they're really trying very, very hard to build in compatibility that you can integrate with your investments. So one of the things that Cisco did, used the term WebRTC. So I'll just state quickly that WebRTC is dead. I'm done with WebRTC. It's over. But not to say that video-based collaboration in a web browser is over. Far from it. We're just taking off. So Cisco really needed H.264 in that browser. So they only use Firefox, because Firefox will load in the background. Call it a plugin. Don't call it a plugin. If you don't actually plug it in, is it a plugin? That's the question, right? The tree falling in the forest. So because Firefox will download the Cisco plugin passively, it works fine with the Cisco H.264. Chrome doesn't support H.264, and so technically, and I believe this to be true, although it could be wrong, Cisco Spark is the only WebRTC application that requires Firefox. That doesn't work at all in Chrome. It actually works not the real-time communications aspects. You can't do voice either as of today in Chrome. So the WebRTC is dead issue. Just to explain that is because, as I've written before, I wrote a post a couple years ago, WebRTC for losers, because the WebRTC never delivered or never promised anything that we couldn't do technically, right? It was always, we could always do video, we could always do all these things. What it promised was this ubiquity, this assumption that I could assume that you would have a browser capable, and I can build my website that you could interact with. That was the big promise. That was the capability that, and in fact, Tassie just recently wrote a post on NoJitter, I think about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, that talked about there's only 4 vendors that matter in WebRTC right now, and it's the 4 browser companies, and I completely agree. Although they've agreed that they're all going to support the codecs, today only Firefox does, and so we've got basically, I think WebRTC is basically dead, but I think that VP8 is alive and well. I think VP9 is coming alive and well. I think the idea of having video in a browser is alive and well. But this idea that I don't need to worry about what client you have is a far future or fictional future. I don't know.
Interesting comment, Matthew. You should probably voice it.
I was just talking with Tim in the side channel about what precisely Dave was meaning by the anytime communication, whether it's talking about a mixture of sync and async, or whether it's just persistent, ubiquitous conversation history like Slack or Hangouts or Circuit Spark, whatever. Yeah,
I think that there's the persistence is certainly a component of it, but the key component of it, in my mind, is the asynchronous plus real time. And so what we tend to do today, and this is it's a mind shift. I mean, the first time I really paid attention to this was with Project Ansible, which became Circuit. And when I first saw it, I looked at it and I said, this doesn't do anything different than what UC does. It's silly, it's stupid. I just didn't get it. It took me a while. Then Circuit launched, I think, last October, and I started really diving into it. I said, oh, I do get it. This is different. This is a different way of working. That's what Unify uses. They use the tagline, a new way to work. And then Cisco jumped into it, and a very similar concept. And I was talking to them, and one of the slides that Rowan puts up in his keynotes, the last 2 keynotes I've heard him do, is he shows how much his email is decreasing. And it's not that email. We use email so much because it's effective and useful and everything, but we've pushed it beyond where it should go. And so so we have these conversations, and our conversations now center around documents. And so you send me a document, and then we start working on a document. Then I call you up, then we have a video call, and our conversations are all scattered. And so this idea that the communications component can actually be more central to our workflow is really what I'm trying to capture. Where we go, so right now you go to email all day, and when you make a phone call, you change your client to something else, and so these new paradigms, and quite possibly yours as well, is this idea of having the centralized client. I didn't realize it. I always complained about Microsoft having Lync being a separate client. I always thought that Lync should be part of Outlook, and they always said, we're not going to do that, and I was still thinking, okay, I do my email, then I click to a conversation. But what's happening now is that we have, they call it, depending on the solution, Cisco's calling them rooms for a metaphor, but you have a room, and the rooms are not just groups of people, but they're groups of subjects. And so so one example that came up at this conference is you might have a team that plans Enterprise Connect every year. And so that's the subject. We have a room. We've got maybe 10 people involved in this room. We share documents, booth plans, schedules, itineraries, all kinds of stuff. And then that room eventually comes to an end because that conference had ended. Well, speed forward another 6 months, the conversation started again for the next year's event. You resume that conversation in that room. Maybe the people changed. Maybe some people are gone, so they're not involved anymore. You add new people, but they can see last year's history. They can see the conversation history. They can see the old documents. They can see what we did last year. And instead of having all that information and history located in your own personal email folders, which gets deleted when you leave, or is almost inappropriate to just let me forward you all my files. That doesn't really happen very often. You have this shared workspace that is either on top of your list because there's lots of activity in it, or if it goes dormant, it kind of falls off your list, and then it'll wake up again when activity starts. So it's just it's kind of like, I was talking to somebody about email. It's like, well, every email has a subject line, so you can sort your emails by subject. You can sort it by who sent it, but you can't really easily sort it by a topic, a broader topic with different people and different subject lines. That's what Google has attempted to do with this new, what do they call it, inbox, which I think is a terrible solution. But so I think we're evolving. That's why I say where the puck is going. So we're changing how we work, how we communicate. These are not things that happen overnight. There's learning curves on us. There's learning curves on the software. But I'm pretty excited about, like I said, there were 5 major solutions on the show floor this year, one of them being in a keynote, and there was only one last year. So this is a space that's changing very quickly.
If I can just add something onto that from my perspective, because I was at Enterprise Connect 2 and wandering around the place looking at these new things, and I guess working on matrix.org is precisely the same idiom that Unify have with Circuit and Slack have, except that it's decentralized and open source and open data so that you can actually own your own conversation history. And the thing that really worried me is that there was very little emphasis on federation or interoperability between any of this new generation.
Yeah, that's more or less nothing new, right? The open source. So the general enterprise, there's a general shift in the enterprise that the enterprise doesn't want to be so technical, right? That's driving the cloud. That's driving. One of the primary arguments for cloud is outsourcing. You're shaking your head no there, but
Oh, sorry, I was complaining about the network cutting out.
Oh, okay. But open source, when Asterisk came out and open source was really popular, 10 years ago, there was a lot of predictions that products like Link and Cisco were doomed because the enterprise is going to. Why would they pay for it when they could build it their own? And the reality is that those products, open source and Asterisk, have been very, very effective in impacting enterprise communications and impacting all kinds of technologies. But the core IT departments are still rather just purchasing products because they don't want to build it, they don't want to support it.
I think if I can interject for a second here, Dave, that's an interesting point. And yeah, open source and Asterisk's done an amazing job, and the other folks who are doing PBXs too. But in my opinion, a name like Cisco has a huge value, so to some people anyway. Point is, it's a stamp of this stuff is industrial, it's for you, it's going to work for the enterprise, or Skype, or whatever it is. Although Skype, the way it started, one understands why they're converting to a whole other naming system and so on. Although they're going back to Skype from Link, is that the deal? Because Link would be the name that would be that label, that brand. Because the brand, point being, and all I wanted to say was that the brand is this certificate of, this is genuine and this has been checked by people and so on. Whereas open source stuff has to start really modest. So,
yeah, but, Randy, the point isn't about open source, though. Surely it's about actual interoperability and federation. Because the problem that we have right now is that all of the 5 companies that Dave has mentioned are doing basically the same thing with a very, very similar user interface and a similar feature set, and none of them interoperate at all. So if you've got one company running a Spark solution and another one running a Link solution, and they go and acquire one another or merge or whatever, or if, heaven forbid, you're an end user trying to track your communication between all these different silos, you're screwed. I mean, there isn't, other than Matrix, an equivalent to SIP or XMPP or even SMTP going and gluing all of the silos together. And it's kind of
Matrix. No, but I don't.
Obviously, I'm plugging my own thing, but it's true. And I mean,
I don't disagree at all with what you said, Matthew. And I said open source. I should have said the smaller things that are up and coming or projects. My point being simply that these known names, even Polycom. I mean, because the question this answers really is, how does this stuff still a thing even? I mean, who cares? And the answer is these are these brands that are really important, and a lot of people have a belief. Hey, it's probably like religion. You were going to say, Dave?
Well, I think it's an evolutionary thing, and we always say that interoperability is really important. Any user will say that, any vendor will say that, but in reality, we all vote with our wallets, and we tend to buy closed solutions. And the reason being is because we're really other things have higher priorities, and so you raise some really good issues. I mean, there's no question about this. I mean, now I'll respond by saying that these are very young solutions. Now, when Circuit was launched in October, it didn't do a lot of things that it does today. I mean, they're upgrading it very quickly. One of the things they announced recently is they now have SIP support, right? So they didn't have telephone support in Unify Spark. You could make video calls within it using VP8, and but there was no way to just do a telephone only conversation unless you turned off your video camera, and so they make phone systems, and so the obvious answer was, aren't you going to integrate Circuit with your phone system? And the answer was, yes, we did, but we did it with a generic SIP connector. And by the way, it'll work with most phone systems. And so that was their approach. Now both Cisco and Unify happen to be in that business, happen to have a huge base of customers that have phone equipment. Now, Interactive Intelligence is coming at it saying, I don't care if you bought a phone system last week, it's legacy. And what we're going to do, they haven't launched it yet, but they announced it, was they're going to be offering integrated telephony services as a cloud service with their service. They call it Communicate. So they have Collaborate, which they just launched, which is kind of like Project Squared in the sense that it's free. There's no pay model yet. You can download it and play with it. And if you want to add voice, in the near future, you'll be able to add Communicate to Collaborate, and that'll be a hosted voice service. And they're like, why would you want to integrate it with the PBX? This is the era of the cloud. And so they demoed it in their launch. They had Polycom phones, they had audio codes phones, and remember, for these guys, Interactive Intelligence, they understand telephony very well, and they're going to be able to pull this off with their eyes closed. This is going to be an easy integration. Biba, who is a much smaller startup and just more of a real startup, focused very heavily on video first, and they built a lot of great video solutions in. And for their voice component, because they didn't have legacy to concern themselves with, they decided to integrate with Twilio. And so they have it today. You can make phone calls with Twilio built into the service, and you pay your Twilio bill. But they're going to go slower with voice than Interactive Intelligence will, because that's not their forte is video. So like I said, it's a broad category, a lot of companies in it. Now, just one other point about interoperability. When you bought a Microsoft solution and another company bought a Cisco solution, and you both had UC and you had presence, you had voice, and all these things, that was great. But like you said, these two companies couldn't really talk together very well. Now, what's happening this next generation as an evolutionary step is that because Cisco is a freemium model, it's very easy to ask you to get a Cisco Spark account. It's not quite the answer you wanted, and then you can participate into my room, and etc. Now, how we actually export data, if we merged, and all that stuff, that's a very legitimate question. But from a federation point of view, they're solving it by opening up the freemium model opens it up to a much easier capability for intercompany collaboration and communication.
A quick question, Dave, because I don't know this. Biba is the name of a young woman's magazine here in France. What is Biba? What do they do? It's not. They are a startup. I don't know how old they are. Probably I'm just guessing 3, 4, maybe 5 years. They came out with this very similar concept of Circuit and Project Squared. They have some nice funding. It's a lot of the executives that came out of Symantec. And they've got a very nice story. They had the same vision that some of these other companies had. They're just moving a little slower because of their size. And actually, this is another important note about WebRTC. Both Cisco and Biba initially wanted to do everything WebRTC, but found a little limiting and frustrating. And so both companies now have native clients for Windows and Mac.
which is the same way that all the companies do it on mobile. They have clients. So, like I said, WebRTC means nothing. I mean, VP8, I get VP8. Open264, got it. Browser-based communications, love it. Just don't call it WebRTC. It doesn't mean anything.
Does H323, right?
Yeah.
Still exist? I mean, does anybody care about that?
It's the same. It's the same thing from a legacy perspective, and so yeah. Econo. So Econo is this very young, progressive video company, and one of the things they announced is that we now support 323. It's like you might not want to put that in the top of the headline. You want to put that in the bottom. But yeah, it's still important. There's a lot of it out there, and people want support for it.
Yeah, because if your 10-year-old conferencing system, or your Polycom VT11 or whatever those things were called.
Oh, Tamberg stuff hasn't died.
Okay. Anyway, very interesting stuff. Yeah, I see what you're saying about the what's behind it. It's not a tech geek thing at all. It's more a label and marketing thing. So makes sense. You judged the innovation thing?
Yeah, so every year I do the innovation showcase. I try to recruit a few judges every year. I got Tim to volunteer last year, and it's an interesting process. The innovation showcase was different this year. We made some fundamental different changes that I don't know if Tim caught that, but in the previous year, the last 4 or 5 years, I don't even know how long we've been doing it. In the previous years, we've always had. Now I got a test signal, Randy. You have the attention span of my cat. So in the past, it's always been focused on startups. It's always been really focused on startups. We had limits on how old the company can be and how much revenue they could have, and the problem with that, I like that. The problem with that is that the audience at Enterprise Connect is a little more not really interested in startups. They don't want to be part of the experimentation wave, right? They want to be a little more polished. And so we were really struggling with, because how do we do that? Because they already have Best of Show, they already have some other events, and what do we do with it? And so we reworked it this year to eliminate the age and revenue requirements, and the major requirement that was a stumbling block was you had to be new exhibitor to Enterprise Connect. And so the logic was we want to introduce innovative new solutions to the Enterprise Connect audience. And that was a great theme, and I was so excited. I thought, man, I'm going to have Google in here because they've never exhibited. I'm going to have Evernote in here because they've never exhibited. I'm going to have companies that everyone knows, household names. Slack, I wanted Slack in there. I wanted I came up with about my fantasy innovation showcase, and they were all it was going to be the magnet on the exhibit floor. We did get some bigger companies, but none of the companies I just mentioned applied. I reached out to their AR, their PR, their sales guys, and said, hey, you should apply. And for the most part, they're above that, right? We don't. If we go to events, it's not because we were judged worthy. We go to events that we decide to go to, and the fact that the Innovation Showcase is subsidized, are you suggesting we can't afford it? I don't know. I'm making up what their excuses were, but there was no interest whatsoever from the companies that I thought would show up. But then the other big change that we did this year was, and we did get some great companies though. In fact, we got some pretty large companies too. The other big change we did this year was we opened it up to 7 vendors. We've always been restricted to 4, and we thought we would have a little more momentum with 7, and I thought that all came together very nicely. And so, very different showcase this year. The companies that were in the showcase, let me pull them up here. The companies that were in the showcase were Fuse. If you're familiar with Fuse, they offer a freemium-based video collaboration model. They have.
Are they German?
No. They used to be called Fuse Box. They got rid of the box. They dropped that a few years ago. So it's similar to a WebEx, similar to a Zoom. It's basically video, and what's really interesting about it, it's a nice HD video. It's got a nice mobile video. They've got a real nice story. They also offer room systems, and it's all free. All the stuff that I just described, well, the room systems you have to pay for, but it's all free. Where the revenue comes in, where you start paying, and it blows my mind that they can pull this off, is PSTN. And so if you actually want to dial into the conference, that's going to cost you. But you can have a conference like we're having now, and a number of advanced features. Their underlying technology is powered by video, very good, very efficient bandwidth, good story. So that's Fuse, F-U-Z-E. We also had a company, very similar company called Collaboration Squared. They I forgot to mention before I go through the list of vendors. One of the other changes in the Innovation Showcase this year was in previous years we just used innovation as the primary category, and we just said if you're cool and new, that's exciting. And Tim can tell you that's a hard thing to judge. This year we decided to keep innovation up there, but it was number 2. And number 1, we wanted to really focus on collaboration. And so we came up with a scoring matrix, and we felt that anything that was really helping people work together more effectively would be prioritized. And so, for example, we got some great solutions for better management. We got some great solutions for analytics and stuff like that. But those weren't necessarily collaborative, and so in the scoring they didn't come out as high. So we got, and we never rank these vendors, by the way. We pick 7 vendors, we put them in, and we don't rank them. There's no best of Innovation Showcase. We don't put them in any. So when I read these to you in order, they are just the order that I'm reading them here. So Collaboration Squared is very similar. It's also a video conferencing solution. They have a little more of this anytime element because they're using Econo, and their brand is called Ubiety. Ubiety, I think it's how it's pronounced, and very interesting, very effective solution, and so great to have them on. The next one was Red Booth. Red Booth is actually one of the more larger companies that we had in there. I think they cited 108,000 users, something like that, and again, another online group collaboration, and probably a little more geared toward workflow than the others, than communications, but a great solution, very interesting solution. To your point on Federation that came up, Nextplane was in there. A lot of you know Nextplane already. It's got a fairly well-known name. They have not exhibited at Enterprise Connect, and so they qualified. And they are mostly known as a Federation service, not a gateway, but a Federation service. So if you have Link and Cisco users that both have instant messaging and voice and stuff, that they can both effectively federate through Nextplane for a per-user fee. What people don't realize is that they're also getting a lot of traction just between Link users. I mean, one of Link's big, or I shouldn't say Link users, I should say same technology customers. And so if 2 companies have Link or Skype for Business soon, and they could just federate, that's one of the features of that product, but there's not a lot of control once you federate. Anybody can talk. And so with Nextplane, you have more granular controls. This department can federate. And you can set it up so that each individual user is approved and has individual rights. We had Fonami, which is one of the smaller companies on board. They have developed basically a solution that helps all calls get logged to Salesforce.com in a very passive background way that doesn't require a client, so kind of an MVNO type of offering. We had Alto Cloud, which was collaboration with customers. And so Alto Cloud is a way of, it's part of that WebRTC promise of tracking where your users are on your website, and when your users now want to call the contact center, bringing in all that context and helping understand what's going on, and it's got much more detailed analytics. Very thorough offering. They're getting a lot of traction. They were actually featured in several posts on No Jitter this week. And so Alto Cloud, and then did I name them? Oh, and Double Robotics. Double Robotics is one of these robotic telepresence companies. Personally, I don't really get it, but personal opinion aside, it's a very clever technology, and apparently people really like it. And the idea of roaming the hallways with your iPad as your camera and video has a very strong applicability in a number of situations that I can't fathom. But nonetheless, there were several on the exhibit floor, several other, and it's not. I think Double Robotics is great. They're the kind of company we wanted to the showcase. There were several robotics there on the floor that did similar things that from bigger companies and whatnot. So the category is growing and emerging and doing well. And I guess if it's as knowledge workers, I find it kind of odd because we could use technologies on our desktop that are so effective. But if you're not necessarily a knowledge worker and you really do need to walk around, you really do need to see things and do things, these are a fairly interesting way of telecommuting with a robotic presence. One of the things they can't do is elevators because there's no way to push a button, or of course they can't do stairways. And so the idea is you have them on every floor, and if you need to go to the next floor, you just jump from one to the other. So this is how we're going to beam. This is the Star Trek vision of how we beam between locations. We just beam between our robots. So that was the Innovation Showcase, and it really is a great opportunity because a lot of these companies, we did a presentation. We had a breakout session. It was compact, standing room only, and each company got to do their pitch, and a couple of them showed a video. The robot didn't work, unfortunately. They were trying to use cellular 4G, and they were trying to have the robot do part of the presentation, but unfortunately, conference hall blues. So that was the Innovation Showcase.
Tim, did you want to say something earlier?
Only Dave mentioned Slack, and there's a really good interview on pando.com. I posted it on the in the chat here, and it's really, really interesting. His thing about it's the CEO there. He's talking about basically messaging being the kind of backbone of the business now, and he's very interesting, smart guy. Long interview.
I just saw the video. I think I may have saw it because of you actually, but So as I mentioned, the category is very broad, and so people say projects. They say Cisco Spark or Circuit or Unified Circuit is like Slack, and that's true. Like Denmark is like Sweden, right? But because they're Scandinavia, but in reality, there's huge differences between these products, and that interview, Stuart really talked about some of that stuff. And just as a point, as an example of that. One thing that Slack does, to my knowledge, and again, they don't talk to me, so I have to just kind of watch interviews and figure out the pieces. But one thing that Slack does is they really feel a very important part of their solution is openness. And one thing that Cisco really feels is an important part of their solution is encryption and privacy controls. And so these are, you could tell that Cisco is talking to an enterprise, and Slack is talking to a lot of smaller companies. When I walk into startup companies, they're like, "We have no secrets. Everything's open here, and we don't even have vacation policies. If you're need vacation, go on vacation. That stuff all works great in younger companies. It doesn't necessarily work well in larger companies." Go ahead.
James is saying hello from Tisbury. Okay. Any other questions about Enterprise Connect or Dave Michels? Been a long time, Dave.
Not as long as you think. I'm trying to do I'm trying to do a lot more walking, so I always listen to my dog walks. I always listen to VUC my dog walks. It's just hard for me to come here in real time on Fridays.
I wish you would, from time to time. Especially those cage match things we did. That was years ago, but it was great. Didn't
No,
you
the problem is that you guys are always wrong about everything, and so
change sides on that anyway? You were for hosted and then you were against, or vice versa?
Oh no, we did that. The cage match you're talking about was Prem versus Cloud, and I took Prem, and Michael Graves took Cloud.
Right.
And although his argument in the cage match was completely weak and wrong, and I dominated and won, he won the war. I'm totally Cloud now.
That's funny. Who wants
I
to?
just tease him. Michael did a great job, and he knows that. Other than you know me, I'm always being sarcastic and facetious.
Well,
if you don't know me, I'm an ass.
well, now we need to do the WebRTC is dead cage match.
Yes, it's dead. What do you think about that, Tim?
Yeah, I've been saying that the JavaScript side of it is less important than the protocol. I think the protocols the protocol and the huge pile of open source is incredibly important. The JavaScript interface is it's nice and it's interesting, but it's not gonna be the thing that's gonna hang around forever. I bet you if you look at a lot of the new products at UC, although they didn't say WebRTC inside, I bet you they were using some of that code base, and I bet you they were using the protocols.
Well, so there was a post I did a while back, and we had this big debate. It was actually around Biba, but nobody knew that at the time. But I was considering Biba a WebRTC company, and some people were pushing back saying they're not WebRTC because they have a client. They tried WebRTC and they decided to go to a client, but their client was using WebRTC technologies. And so the guy that I was arguing with said that, he pulled up the spec of WebRTC and it said, browser-based technology, and so it was an interesting debate, and it forced me to reach out to people like Tassie and Eric Lagerway and try to get some more opinion on this and where is the line, and we decided Biba was WebRTC at the time, but the point was that Tassie had this whole thing. He just goes, hey, if they couldn't have done it before and they're doing it now, it's WebRTC, and I don't care if it's a client, I don't care whatever. And so I've taken that a step further, and I'm saying it's not WebRTC, that it's the individual codecs and technologies. But yeah, I'm very excited about what the thing has done. I just really feel that the original bill of goods is far from being delivered, and that was so important, was this concept of universal, that I could just assume a company can build a website that allow you to talk to their contact center agents, which they could always do. They've been able to do that for 5-10 years without having to install a plugin or without having to assume that and being able to assume that your browser would be ready. And we're no closer to that than we were before.
Oh, I think we're closer. We're just not close enough.
Okay, fair enough.
Are you sitting in a subway car or something, Tim?
No, I'm sitting. I'll show you where I'm sitting.
Oh, you just changed angles, and it looked a little weird because you have a door behind you and so on. Yeah.
There you go.
You cut out the woman who was behind.
Behind me, yes, indeed.
Yeah, well, she was off to the side, but the point is that the look is different, and there's different pipes and stuff like that. We can probably.
That's how my beer gets here.
Oh, okay.
I hope.
Oh, mine's gone already, and it's time to think about. Oh, I've got something on the fire too. I got to go look at. Further with Dave publicly before we cut this off, because we've been running for over an hour and a half, and it's probably better to keep it a little bit short.
Yep, I'm good.
But Dave can stay with us after for the mature audiences only.
No, I got to go. I've been out of town all week. I got things to do. So, but
I'm sorry we delayed, but unfortunately we couldn't wait too long to start. So.
Oh no.
You got.
You know what it was? Is my computer's been off, and I turned on my computer, and it took me about 20 minutes. It had so many updates to.
Updates, of course. There was a scene. There's a TV show called Arrow, and the guy was on an island for 5 years. And he comes back to the company and reboots and they're sponsored by Microsoft, obviously, product placement. And he reboots all the computers, and they're all booting, and it's like they skipped the part about how there would be 5 years of updates.
Yeah.
Let alone updating the OS, right? But also really funny. They're constantly showing they have Windows phones, they have Windows, the Surface tablets and everything else. There's all kinds of views of all their stuff in it. It's kind of
Yeah.
fun. Because that's the only time I've
I just kind of one thing that I wanted to address, because you mentioned about Skype versus Link and all that, and I think there's some good confusion there. So you got Skype, which I know you guys all know and use, and you got Skype. So that's Skype. That's not really changing. I mean, it's changing as it always has. There's a new version, seems like every Tuesday, but whatever. Link is not particularly changing either. It's mostly a rebranding effort. And the reason being, and it makes sense to me, is that when you walk into an enterprise that doesn't understand what UC is, the conversation goes like, well, do you know what Skype is? You say, yeah. Well, it's like that, but for business. And so they're renaming it. Now, Link already supports Skype video and Skype voice. They've already managed that federation. It's a clunky federation. So one of the things with the new release of Skype for Business is they've dramatically improved the federation. They did a cute thing where actually the Link, I don't know if this is true on Skype, but on Link they've done a much better job where you put in somebody's name and then you could add, in France and really narrow it down and things like that, so one thing, it's terrible to find people in Skype directory. It's really hard. So they've really improved that. So obviously both products are going to continue to improve and continue to evolve. But Link is not dead by any means. They're not replacing Link with Skype. They're renaming Link Skype for Business, and they're continuing to integrate them closer and better together. And one of the key benefits of that is if you have Link in your business and you want to do, like we talked about, reach out to have your contact center reach out to consumers, is that you could, in theory, have a consumer come in on a Skype connection. Remember, 800 numbers are all national, so you bypass that national restriction with Skype and go into rich video and presence and all that stuff in a contact center if you had a contact center that was powered by Link or a Link solution that had a third-party contact center. We're not quite there yet. That's the kind of vision. That's what's happening with the product. So don't think that Link is dead. It's really more of a rebranding than anything else.
And like I said, this branding thing is super important. I'm not sure that Skype is the right brand, but what you just said makes sense. So maybe it's what I think was the opposite of the truth, which is that Skype is the name that's known. To me, I associate Skype with the grandma and the grandkids, but if you walk into a business and they don't know Link, but they know Skype, you go, well, this is Skype for Enterprise, Skype for Business.
One of the things they showed yesterday, the keynote, was the new video call you have in Skype, which would look a certain way, now looks like a Skype call. They're making the UI more. What they would say is they're making the UI more familiar because everyone knows what a Skype call looks like, and so yeah, you got to remember that Skype's got a lot more users than Link does, and so
right. So they're hoping to cash in. Okay, we're going to take it out here. Anybody who wants to stay in the Hangout is welcome to do so, but we will be cutting off the public thing after this message. Hey, that was the bleeding edge of the IP communications and VoIP community. We're at vuc.me on the web. Thanks to Simwood.com, who can turn you as a developer into a telco. Our host at PBX is provided by onsip.com. The site at vuc.me is on bluehost.com. We use zipdx.com for our wideband, full-featured conference bridge. And our local rate dial-ins are from voxbone.com. Every Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time. See you next week.
Look to the skies. Keep watching the skies.